Markets don't lie, and our closer has a chart that shows where investors have been placing their bets. 3 letters, USA.
Correct. Correct.
And what's fascinating is actually at a significant premium to what's happening around the world. People are putting their money in the U.S.
Right. No, it's interesting. I think my last trip to Europe was about 6 or 8 weeks ago, and I'd go to places like Italy, and they'd say, U.S., you're going to lead the world out of the global slowdown, and U.S. growth is really robust. They said, well, if we're leading at 2%, so that's not exactly, a strong rally, but still, there's this view that growth is accelerating in the U.S. And look, we think that there is a higher probability of getting to 5% nominal GDP, 3% real in 2014 than there has been any point since 2010. But still, in 2012, we're struggling with that. Now, that in the early stages of the recovery, people bought the recovery in the emerging markets, and you could see the strong growth in China, and that was evidenced by the performance of those international
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's actually bring the camera in here, Rami, and show people exactly what Barry's talking about. In other words, what we're looking at is a ratio in white of the U.S. relative to emerging markets, and then in yellow, just the U.S. by itself, the S&P 500, and they tended to trade together, which is your point, up to a certain period in time.
That's correct, and it started to really started to come unglued a little bit in late 2011 and early 2012 when people started to think about, well, maybe China's going through a transformation, maybe it isn't so strong. Europe went into a recession, another recession, and stocks with foreign exposures really started to underperform, and that underperformance has really accelerated to the downside in recent months.
So in other words, what we've seen is right there. The S&P 500, the good old U.S., has kept going, whereas the ratio of the U.S. divided by what's happening elsewhere has shrunk because of this lag.
Correct. Correct.
And so what do you do about it now?
Well, our perspective on this is that we actually think that the U.S. domestically leveraged cyclicals, so financials and consumer discretionary, are probably overpriced and due for a bit of a pretty good correction.
In other words, you can't really decouple. You can't have the U.S. beat the rest of the world that consistently. Eventually, we're all in this thing together.
That's right. And what you're seeing this week with things like the Russell 2000, which is domestically leveraged, small caps really underperforming, ISM on Friday or on Monday really hit that issue home for investors.
And that's why we've been talking about puts, Sarah.